This is the Leaders on Fire podcast. On this show, we'll be inviting guests in to talk about crucible moments in their lives and unpack how it developed character and perseverance and how they emerged as leaders on fire. We hope that this podcast is an encouragement and an inspiration to you. Today, our guest is Josh Wildman. Josh is the CEO of Wildman Business Group. He also happens to be one of my good friends, my brother-in-law, and also a business partner in Wildman Business Group. So I'm super excited to hear more about his story. He's got some great things to share, some crucible moments in his life, and also how that wraps around the story of Wildman. So let's welcome Josh to the show. Josh, welcome to the Leaders on Fire podcast, man. It's a privilege to have you on the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Hey, so let's light the fire a little bit. So you and I go back quite a ways. We were friends in high school. And actually, I don't know if people know this, but you invited me on a ski trip and I was 14 or 15. I was a freshman, you were a senior in high school. And that was the ski trip that I got introduced to Jesus. I got saved. So you must have seen something in me that's like, man, this guy needs Jesus. So you invited me to come on the ski trip, huh?
Yeah, we all need Jesus. Every day we need Jesus.
Yeah, so we were friends in high school, and then ended up joining forces together in business. I think I was 21, and you had been in business for a couple of years after that. So we've got a lot of different stories between the two of us. Great history of friendship and relationship. But tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is Josh? Tell us about your family and who you are.
So I love Jesus. I have Lent in my veins. I love the laundry business. I love marketplace ministry. And I have my high school sweetheart is the love of my life, Leslie, 26 years this past July. And then two boys, not boys, young men now. Noah is 22 and Bo is 19. And they're something else. They keep me busy. So lots of fun.
Awesome. So you're the CEO of Wildman Business Group. How long have you been at Wildman?
So 25 years.
25
this
years.
Past May, so a little over 25 years.
Yeah. Awesome, man. That's really cool. So let's fan the flame a little bit. Let's talk about how in the world did you get involved with Wildman? Because you didn't start out coming out of high school and college as a guy that wanted to get into the laundry business. In fact, you had a different idea, right? And you were a professional wakeboarder, or you were getting ready to go professional. You were semi-pro at that time, I believe. So tell us how you got into Wildman.
So the funny thing is, I say I've Lent in my veins, but I wanted nothing to do with our family business, and I did not want to live in Warsaw, Indiana. And it's cool how God kind of, it seems like anytime I say, I'm not going to do this, God says, no, that's exactly where I'm going to plant you. And, it's, I know we're going to talk about crucibles, and it was one of my moments there where God would sometimes physically break me to keep me on a path, I think, or I look back now and can see that. And I had gotten married, so as you can tell with giving a little bit of my bio, I've been at Wildman less than I've been married, but I had gotten married, and my wife and I was trying to finish college, pursuing professional wakeboarding. Leslie was not in school, we were just making ends meet. We were young and in love and really poor. We made $18,000 combined our first year of marriage, and neither one of our cars would go over 45. So we had to borrow a car to go to dinner in Fort Wayne. So I needed a good, stable income and job. I'd been waiting tables for the summer with benefits. And so I asked my dad, I was like, hey, can I work for the company this summer? But I had already committed to a wakeboard coaching job in St. Petersburg, Florida. And, my goal was to join the pro tour for wakeboarding and then move and finish school and teach wakeboarding in Florida and, be in a warmer climate that you could ski all year round. And I was practicing, it wasn't too long into the job. I was about 30 days in, and I was running a route. So I had been put on a route and learning that. But we had Fridays off. We only worked 4 days. And so I would train on Fridays, and I was trying to learn a new trick, wakeboarding. And I ended up with a very severe broken leg, the one that took me out for the whole summer. and lost my sponsors, lost my job opportunity, or so I thought. And so there I was with a broken leg and a new wife, and I hadn't finished college yet, but I was still working at Wildman, and so I started special projects, and that job became a calling, and then what I would even refer to as a mantle that I'm privileged to bear and just love it. So love the people.
That's awesome, man. So the story of wakeboarding didn't end there, though, in your life. As you look to the next generation, tell us a little bit about Bo and Noah, because they did end up making it to the Pro Tour.
Yeah.
So kind of tell us how that went full circle.
Yeah, it's kind of cool how God, you think he's taking a dream away, and he actually just gives it back to you tenfold. And our two sons were very athletic, and we had them try everything. We just be in a sport and try everything and find out what you love and be active and glorify God in it. And so our oldest, Noah, was really kind of down to. He was a very good football player too, but he picked up the wakeboarding, was doing pretty well, and said, "Look, I want to get really good, and to do wakeboarding, you got to train all year round." And we were blessed enough to have the resources to have a go at it. And so really Noah kind of led the way, saying, I want to do this. Bo was a surfer and kind of just in his brother's coattails. And then 12 months later, Bo had big contracts and Noah had a sponsorship, but Bo took off in multiple disciplines. And so we ended up every winter in Florida. They would be in Florida, and I'd go back and forth. So a big sacrifice as a family, but in a lot of ways it brought us really close. So we still ended up in Florida a lot of the year and wakeboarding. And I even ended up competing in my early 40s for, just kind of had always kept riding, and that was a lot of fun. So yeah, it's cool to see them. Bo's one of the top. Noah still rides sometimes, about half the tournaments. He's really good, but Bo's one of the top guys in the industry. So it's fun to watch them, just do well with that.
Yeah, and they compete at the world level. So, I mean, when you say the top of the industry, I mean, Bo is in the top elite athletes of the world.
Yeah, top
in
3
wake
in surfing.
Wake foil.
Top 3 in surfing and wake foiling, and top 20 in pro wakeboard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome, man. So you also have a book coming out soon. And in this book, you talk a little bit about this early journey that you already shared and how you got into Wildman. And then also how it transitions into this heart for marketplace ministry that really just came alive as you got into business. And I don't know at what point it really started happening. I just know that it was a gradual experience. And one of those events was Global Leadership Summit. We talk about that. I don't know when it was. I think it was 2004, somewhere in there. We were both in our 20s, and and that's when it really ignited this idea of, man, we can use our business for some awesome things. And so in that book, you talk about your story and then a lot of that journey. You want to just kind of give us a little overview of that?
So unpacking the book, I wasn't as talented as you to sit down and figure it out and take all my journals, which I don't have a lot of journaling, and write my own book. So I'm using a ghostwriter who's been really helpful, because what we're writing together, I think, is a better representation of a journey that anybody can really take if they want to live out their faith in their business and marketplace ministry or business as a mission. Be a leader on fire. That's it's at least our story, and a lot of Wildman's story of just muddling through it and figuring it out and just being earnestly pursuing God and what that can do to change people's lives. So at least the working title of the book right now is Faith Works, because we've just seen that it works. It's culturally work, it expands the kingdom, and then there's a business aspect to it too. And so we're just telling that story, and a big piece of that is how we got inspired. GLS, Global Leadership Summit, hadn't been exposed to that, but too, it was my dad, our dad. His example. There's a chapter in the book called Malachi Math, and just really talks about that verse, and in Malachi 3:10, just, bringing the whole tithe. And, how that was really not any, that was a foundation my dad led. Mm-hmm. But, we've been in that blessing of that, basically putting God to the test, and just seeing that work out. And it's been certainly a journey. Part of the goal with the books to inspire, but it's also to equip people, saying there's going to be crucible moments that are refining and hard, but maybe our story can help you avoid some of the rework and pain or just stumbling around that we ended up doing as we got to meet people that were further down that journey than us. And so, yeah, it's excited about it. And, but it's been a process too, as you well know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
It's a process.
Well, and I think too, you mentioned this, your dad was instrumental in kind of paving that way for us, and his intentionality with just living purposefully. And I believe it was the year or the year before he challenged us to tithe as a company, in a time when we didn't have any money. I mean, we were growing, and we were at that size of organization that was very difficult, cash poor, you might say, and we were growing, and your dad said, we're going to tithe, and we made a commitment to the local church, the Warsaw Community Church building campaign, Imagine, that they had back then. I think that was 2003. And since then, we've just never turned back.
No, yeah. It's, and I had little faith. So it wasn't my faith working out, because when my dad presented that to our CEO, Steve Bryant, who was, I was just sitting there going, well, this is going to be a quick no, because, I was acting as the accountant at that time and spent a lot of my time just talking to vendors, on when we could pay them. And, I know for a fact we borrowed from our line of credit that was usually maxed out, but we put those checks went the first of every month. And we paid it, and since then, we've always just increased that amount as the business has grown every year, and it's it's the math works. Having the faith to do it, and then it's crazy.
Yeah, in fact, this is an interesting principle, and I don't know if you call this out in your book, but it just made me think about it. Since then, we've always forecasted our giving off of what we think we're going to do in revenue and profit, not off of what we did the previous year. Mm-hmm. So we look ahead, and in faith, we set the giving budget, hoping that it's going to come through, and it's always an increase. And so it's an interesting principle, because we have continued to put that first.
Yeah, and unpacking that's definitely the part that ends up, like the math, we usually our overall commitment's, 20%, but it usually ends up, it can be over 30%, depending on the year. But it just works out. There's never the business continues to grow, and the people we impact, not just financially, but just in the business and the community grows. But, there's not like all this cash sitting aside.
Yeah.
It's constantly in faith, because it's getting put right back into either being generous or growing the company.
Yeah. Yeah. And just, just to give people the scale of kind of what's happened, in those early years, I know when I started, we were somewhere around 70 employees or something like that, if I recall. And it was probably less than that when you started, because you started a few years earlier. And, today we're knocking on the door of 500, in the upper 400s, if I'm not mistaken, of employees, 7 locations. And so it has continued to expand. And it's not been an easy journey a lot of the way, but we've continued to be faithful and watch God actually do pretty amazing things through that process. So, all right, let's turn up the heat, and it's time to enter the crucible. So this is the part of the podcast where, we ask our guests to share a crucible moment, crucible season, or multiple, maybe that are connected, that where the heat was just cranked up in your life and you were under intense pressure that was difficult. But because you have a faith in Christ, that persevering through those trials, James says to consider it pure joy, right? Like it's the testing of our faith that creates character. And then you emerge as a leader on fire. So just take some time here and share with us, some crucible moments or a season or anything you'd like to share.
Yeah. I think that for me, one of the challenges has always been to lay down my own flesh and pride, really, and identity. And it's easy to get, tied up in what you do is who you are. And so, you kind of teed up the first crucible moment that was really big in my life. I mean, there's certainly lots, but that injury, wakeboarding, is kind of in my mind that this is, who I'm going to be. And that changed, in a split second, did a full 180. But I think another time where I had to lay down identity, was a crucible moment. And you're part of this story too, Drew, is, and after 20 years, blessed as family that we, and to have a board of directors that really challenged me to take a sabbatical. Like, you should take some time. We've grown a lot, been going really hard as a business, and, young kids growing up, family and all that. And so I took 90 days off, and it was February of 2020 when I left to do that. And I know with the way I operate, like, I had to totally disconnect, like, no texts, no emails, like, can't be checking in, because my mind will get consumed with what's going on. That's just kind of how I operate. And, it was funny, the first 2 weeks I spent really unhappy, even though I was in Hawaii surfing with my family, which is my favorite thing to do. And I'm like, why am I so unhappy? And come to find out, I was just so used to being needed and having an answer. And I was just kind of going through withdrawal of I don't have anything pressing to do today except for be present with my family and my Lord and Savior, and enjoy his, beautiful earth and ocean. And, kind of realize, maybe there's more to this 90 days than I had even anticipated, and had a good coach through that, and had to get to the point of really feeling like I had fully surrendered, God, I want to do what you want me to do. I want my talents to be used for what you would want. And then there was this little thing that happened in March. So 30 days into that 90 days, the whole world shut down. And with COVID, and kind of going, what is going on here? And what do I do? What's the responsible thing to do? Because I'd left and said, hey, call me if it's on fire, literally, and burning down, or there's some kind of crisis that, would need me. And you were leading at that time, Drew, and I think it was really hard for me not to what's going on? What are we doing? to stay disengaged. But I think that was part of the faith works in that journey of it was more of a mental journey than anything, a crucible moment. And I love James overall. It's my favorite book in the Bible. But I love James 1:1 because, as leaders, there are no two. I think John Maxwell says this. There are. Craig Rochelle would say everything rises and falls, or with leadership. Or a good leader makes everything better. John Maxwell would say there's no two consecutive good days in any leader's life. And so when you're a leader on fire, it's not promising that it's all going to be awesome. And it's saying actually for every other day you're going to be going through a James 1:1 of some sort. And then sometimes it might be 90 days of James 1:1 or a year. And certainly have a lot of those in telling the story in the book. But that's really, that was a big crucible moment, and definitely came back, still having to lay down identity, but with just a different perspective, holding it a lot looser. And so that was a good one.
So let's unpack that a little bit more. So you'd been going pretty hard for 20 years in the business, and you are an operator at heart. And what I mean by that is you're very detailed. You like to know the details, and you have a grasp on everything that's going on, and you don't let things slide, and you're on it, right? And so this moment of being on the sabbatical, a crisis hits a company that you're responsible for as a CEO. And I just can't imagine how difficult that would have been in the struggle of response, because we didn't talk. You're right. I mean, I did the best I could to not reach out, even in the midst of like this crisis situation, and it was difficult for me, trying to navigate that, and with the board and everything else, figure out what the appropriate thing to do is. But I mean, just talk a little bit more about the emotions you must have been feeling. I mean, you've been running this thing for 20 years, and then 30 days in, it could literally just completely implode. Like the way the world was functioning, and luckily we were, what was it called? The type
essential business.
Yeah, we were an essential business, and so we were able to keep functioning and keep servicing out there. But it was difficult. Like, it was going to shut down, right? And so explain kind of the feelings you were going through, like the emotions you were experiencing when you were detached from that. And what kind of faith did you have to just trust that God was going to take care of it? I mean, if there was a time that you should have broken your sabbatical rule and do so responsibly, that would have been the time to do it. Mm-hmm. But how did you stay steadfast in that commitment and trust? Like, talk more about that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it was the obviously COVID didn't happen because I was on a sabbatical, but God uses everything to align what's going on in life with His plan. And for me, it was that, like, it was the test. I don't know if COVID had been going on, if I would have really got to the level of release and brokenness that I needed to be healthy coming back. Because part of what God was doing, when you go through the crucible moments, you should be able to look in the rearview mirror, and it never seems as bad as it was when you're going through it. And usually you go, you know what, I learned so much. And now, and if you're applying what you learned, then there's usually a good outcome. It talks about that in James 2, right? And for me, what I was learning is, like you said, I was hands-on operator. Mm-hmm. And where the business was at, number of employees and locations and everything, really, like, I couldn't be a hands-on operator anymore. I had to learn to go from leading some leaders, but mostly leading managers, to leading leaders. And, I don't think I would have got there if that hadn't happened. So it was a daily thing where connectedness with God, I remember I would run every morning and I would just listen to the same worship song, pray the same prayer, and just say, God, you just got to give me peace about this today. And then, I'd say I trust. Big piece of it was you and the board, and I trust if I'm needed, I'll get called. But I need to not feel like I'm the guy that needs to be needed or insert myself without being asked. So that was hard, but good, really good. It was a good experience.
Yeah, man, that's pretty intense when you think about that. Mm-hmm. So let's shift to kind of this last segment of being a leader on fire. And for people that are going through a crucible now, that may be in that season, or have these ebbs and flows where they, like you talked about, sometimes it's every other day, or there are some crucibles or moments, or their days, or the weeks, months, years. But whatever the case, how important are these crucible moments to lean in and embrace it as a work that God is doing in our lives, knowing that He's going to produce a fruit and refine our character and melt away the impurities? That's the whole idea of the crucible, and that's the biblical metaphor we see when they're talking about we're going to be refined like silver. And we know that silver is ready to come out of a crucible when the silversmith can see his reflection. And likewise, when we're refined and those impurities and those things are melted away, God's able to see His reflection in us. He pulls us out of the crucible. How important do you feel these moments are to be in a leader on fire and to be a leader of depth and character?
Well, I think if you don't have those moments and you're not wrestling with them, then you're not going to be a leader long, because you're out of touch with your team or your customer or your own abilities at some level. So you're gonna have them. It's to the level that you surround yourself. I think a big piece of it is, one, connection with God. Like, how are you staying rooted in Scripture, in worship, in prayer, in meditation? that's got to be on your calendar, and it's got to be a big chunk of every week. And, I think that for me, learning that was really important, because certainly it doesn't make it easier, but it just brings you back to what, this is just a dot. Like, our time on earth is really about how many people we can bring into the kingdom with us and influence. It's nothing more than that. And then, I think it's just really good with like what your, Leaders on Fire, and you think about C for One. I think surrounding yourself in those seasons with one-on-one accountability and mentorship, small group accountability and mentorship, and then, an organization or organizations where you can continue to be inspired is really important, because they're going to help you grow. Like, you're going to have people around you that have been there already. It's a lot harder to learn when you're on your own than if you've got people that can say, yeah, I've done that. I've been there. I know exactly what you're going through. You're going to be okay. And here's a couple pointers on how to get through it better. So that's how I guess I'd frame it up.
Well, let's wrap up with this. Maybe put your heart on the table here and just preach to us a little bit about your passion for marketplace ministry. And I know you've got a favorite quote from Billy Graham that you'd maybe like to share. And just talk about the passion and the heart behind business and how it can be used to further the kingdom, and just your personal conviction around that. Just share a little bit about that.
So, the quote from Billy Graham is that, he prophetically said, hey, I believe that the next great move of God may come through the men and women of the marketplace or the workplace. And, I think that was profound to be said, some years ago. And, when you think about what we have as business leaders, is we have the greatest resource, at least in the U.S. right now, which is not money, it's actually time. And so with work, they say, I think it's 60 or 70,000 hours you're going to spend at work. Well, that's a captive audience to be able to be in community with. I think it's not about church or religion or preaching, it's actually community. That you start with, who's this person, where are they at in life, and how do you help pour into them and meet their needs? So they might go, man, this place, or you as a leader, you're a leader on fire, and there's something different, and I want to understand that, which gives you the ultimate opportunity, because marketplace ministry is all about the good news, to bring people into relationship with Christ and to grow it and develop it and engage it. And I guess I would just challenge everybody that's listening to this or engaging in your platform is, what are you waiting for? There's fear over, like, what can I do? What should I do? Like, God's word is bold, and everything you need is in there. Just do it. Like, be generous, do crazy stuff. We often hear that at Wildman, like, I can't believe you guys do all this stuff. Have you ever had anybody have a problem with this? And, I think when it's done in the right spirit, and it's, you just do it because it's the right thing to do. And and then you see culture and community grow, and we're not perfect at Wildman by any means. In fact, we've got lots of opportunities and planks, but I think we're intentional, and the heart's right, the intent is right. And then you get stories and testimonies, which is the number one KPI in business, I think, is what testimonies are coming out of it. And that gives you the affirmation that, we're doing something right. So what are you waiting for? Just, go for it. And then you've got, your awesome platform and just your personal testimony, Drew, to really help develop that. So, I would just say, do it. Lean in, be all in, go for it. So,
awesome, man. Thanks for sharing that. Well, dude, thanks for being on the podcast. I know you got a lot going on. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come spend it with us and to share your story. So thanks for coming, man.
That's the best cup of coffee I've had in a while.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh.
Appreciate you.
Yep. Thank you for listening to today's episode. Perhaps it has prompted a painful memory or challenged you to reflect on times you were in the crucible. Some of you may be in a crucible now, but be encouraged. Maybe, just maybe, God is using this to refine your character so that you emerge as a leader on fire. If today's episode was an encouragement to you, share it with others who may also find encouragement in the Leaders on Fire podcast. So, let's go into the world sent out as leaders on fire. Until next time.